everybody! It's me, Carmine DeStefano, the Bookman. In 1987, Konami made a game called Metal Gear. Brainchild of Wunderkid Hideo Kojima, it focused mostly on tactical reconnaissance and sneaking around rather than action and adventure. Now, at the time, Konami was a juggernaut in the gaming industry, making console games that even to this day are considered classics. But at this point, there's really nothing that they're making for consoles except for Metal Gear, which is the only thing saving it from being a mobile-specific gaming company. After going through all the games from beginning to end that are part of the main canon, it begs this one question from me. Why? Let's start with the playstyle. From the get-go in Metal Gear, it's very, very methodic, considering whenever you got caught, you would be overwhelmed. Tactical reconnaissance was not messing around. You could not be detected at all if you didn't want endless arrays of soldiers coming after you. They inserted a sneak feature, meaning a crawl feature, which has maintained itself throughout the course of all these years, but that makes the gameplay slow, with no real player progression aside from health increases after defeating certain bosses in only the first two titles, and the same gun formats, though the time frame might change the makeup of them. It leads to having the same gaming experience over and over again, with the only exceptions being Metal Gear Solid Acid and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Basically all the games are the same things over and over. So playstyle is not its strongest suit. So it's gotta be the heroes that draw everybody in, right? Well, throughout the games in the main canon, you get three main characters: Solid Snake, Raiden, or Naked Snake, otherwise known as Big Boss. All three of them have a few things in common. One is they're always getting captured, another is they don't know shit, and the last is they usually have to be saved at the last minute by somebody you didn't expect would want to save them. And I mean pretty much every game, these guys are in some kind of turmoil that should have been avoided very easily, especially from those who are not supposed to be detected. You're always thrown in these situations with the idea that if you get caught, the world will explode, and yet for whatever reason, they keep getting caught. Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops starts with Big Boss, who's supposed to be the greatest soldier of all time, being captured and interrogated by Lieutenant Cunningham. And the thing about them not knowing anything really comes down to this. Every last bit of storyline or cutscenes involves military jargon and political mumbo-jumbo that's hard to keep up with. But the heroes should have some kind of background in them. Instead, the exposition is elongated immensely because the heroes can't figure out one fucking thing. A scenario that would be painted out would be something along the lines of, Snake, the GOP and the IPS want you to go out to Afghanistan for they have stolen the RXN virus. RXN virus? It's a virus that turns people's insides into cotton candy. Cotton candy? A sweet sugary substance that under the right conditions has the same continuity and consistency as cotton. So, what you're saying is, the Afghans have found a way to turn people's insides into cotton candy. The first such instance happened back in 1905 when, and it goes on and fucking on. But despite their ineptitude, it seems as though whenever a situation pans out where they have to take on these bipedal robotic weapons of mass destruction that are supposed to be ridiculously armored, you give them a rocket launcher and boom, there goes the dynamite. It's not that hard for them to destroy a boss or a giant Metal Gear of different sort of formats, but when it comes to trying to sneak through areas or fight old farts with specific magic powers, that seems to be a problem. The best thing is these guys keep getting captured, which means they keep putting themselves in situations to be captured, which means the enemies that want them dead, that know that they can cause a ruckus, keep leaving them alive when they should have been killed. Like this guy at the end, in this massive boss fight. He gets Big Boss, otherwise known as Naked Snake, in a precarious position and leaves him alive when you know the guy's coming to kill you. What fucking sense does that make? Which leads me to another issue. The villains. They are a fucking egregious error. They're so over-the-top, wacky, goofy, cartoonish supervillains that either twirl their figurative or literal curly mustaches while they mock and laugh at their excessive, extraordinary capabilities. I'm going to destroy everything. I'm so powerful. Meanwhile, not all of their motivations, if any of them, are really that obscene. Vulcan, this maniacal, twisted jackass with lightning power, just wants the philosopher's legacy back, which was his birthright. But they're so batshit fucking crazy, it's hard to take any of them seriously. Like this guy who wants to bring peace by causing a nuclear explosion, saying as much as he's laughing maniacally while throwing a guy in a wheelchair backwards down the stairs. What kind of fucking mentality is that? The worst, of course, is Revolver Ocelot. Here's a dick face that shows up in Metal Gear Solid, never mentioned before, apparently working for the Russians while he was teaming with Liquid Snake in the attempt to get Big Boss's corpse. He loses his hand because he's a dick cheese that does nothing but flips his gun around and shoots bullets off the wall. He's the first boss fight in a rather useless one. With his slick near-English accent and devious manner, he turns on Liquid Snake in the name of Mother Russia, then turns on Mother Russia in Metal Gear Solid 2 in the name of the CIA, otherwise known as the Patriot, which basically it seemed like he turned on the CIA to work for. But it seemed as though getting a new hand from the dead body of Liquid Snake has now made Liquid Snake his brain. So now he's acting as Liquid Snake, which then leads us to Metal Gear Solid 3, where we go back in the past and see him as a crew-cutted fuckfoe that apparently gets his ass handed to him by the guy he's trying to kill. Yet, at the same time, he's still a leading member of a specific group of Russian militants who is so pissed off that he gets sunned every time by the guy he's trying to kill, he, in an attempt to kill him, shoots out Big Boss's right eye in point-blank range, which leads to them having a standoff. The big battle that's supposed to end one of their lives leads to just Revolver Ocelot jumping off a plane, saluting in his douchey way. Then we move back up to Metal Gear Solid 4, where now he's still acting as Liquid Snake, controlling this artificial intelligence he originally wanted to destroy. Oh wait, we found out that he originally wanted to destroy his Revolver Ocelot when we were talking to Ava, who explained that he was one of the 5 elites working with Big Boss to stop Major Zero and this artificial intelligence known as the Patriot all these years. We then cut to Metal Gear Solid 5, where Revolver Ocelot now is acting as a good guy, helping Big Boss while the world wants Big Boss dead. And now he's talking with his spurs on his cowboy boots and his long trench coat and his sunglasses like one of them slick southerners. Hey, Big Boss, I'm here to help you out. When it's not even the real Big Boss to begin with. Which now leads to the next biggest issue. The fucking storyline. Jesus Christ, this storyline has so many twists and turns you think it's a goddamn pretzel. The only problem is, most of these twists and turns betray the entire canon and the characters involved. You cannot make each game its own game when you're talking about a running storyline. And that's what seems to happen. From the very first Metal Gear, there was a storyline that made no fucking sense. In the very first Metal Gear, Solid Snake, a rookie operative for a group called Foxhound, is sent out to a place called Outer Heaven by the leader of Foxhound, Big Boss, to find an operative of Foxhound named Gray Fox, who sent a message saying something about Metal Gear. Turns out that Outer Heaven was owned by Big Boss, and Big Boss sent Solid Snake out there to be killed before he found out anything so Big Boss can falsify reports to the government. What fucking sense does it make to put so many of your own operatives in the line of fire and have so many of them killed in the pre-chance to have falsified documents when you can simply falsify documents on your own without going through this ridiculous scheme? The best part about it is, when Big Boss dies, it sounds like he's still alive because it was the Phantom Big Boss. And from there, it continues on. Like the real Big Boss in Metal Gear 2 being burned to death, yet he appears in Metal Gear Solid 4 no worse for wear. Apparently he's been alive the whole time, just sort of in a coma, or resurrected by some means, and yet still shows no scars of being burnt alive or exploding in front of your face. And that corpse was supposed to be used by Liquid Snake and then later on Solid Dust Snake to invade this artificial intelligence that was controlling everybody. Solid Dust Snake appearing in Metal Gear Solid 2, who looks and acts exactly like Big Boss, yet we've never heard of him before Metal Gear Solid 2. Just like the artificial intelligence in Metal Gear Solid 2, known as the Patriots, that was never mentioned before. So many of these motivations never mentioned before. And the best part about Big Boss is this whole time he was utilized as a villain. He was the villain and utilized by the villains only so that in Metal Gear Solid 3, we get zapped back to his first personal campaign, where he's being treated like a hero given his own James Bond action series theme song. Snake Eater, he loves his women, Snake Eater. Which now suddenly makes Big Boss into some kind of really good figure when apparently he was a maniacal asshole that was trying to kill his own sons or clone sons for the sake of gaining power using these machines that throughout the course of his own history he was trying to destroy. And that again leads to another issue, which is the chronology. It makes no fucking sense. You start off in the near future as Solid Snake in Metal Gear. You then move forward in the near future as Solid Snake, to move forward again in Metal Gear Solid as Solid Snake in the more distant future, to move even further in the distant future as Solid Snake, but then you become Raiden for some ungodly reason throughout the course of Metal Gear Solid 2, only to be sent back to 1964 as Big Boss, only to have the canon now stay on Big Boss's career, moving forward 10 years into the 70s in Portable Ops, only to move all the way back to the not too distant future in Metal Gear Solid 4, only to be sent way back into the 70s again as Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, only to remain as Big Boss in the 70s, in which case he gets into a coma for 9 years and we get moved forward into the 80s. Makes sense, right? And there are so many of these stupid turns that make no sense, like Cunningham torturing Big Boss, looking like he wants to kill him, only for at the last second him to say, "Hey, Big Boss, good job! We worked together in the CIA fantastically. Now go home and be a hero. I'll take care of it from here. You tried fucking killing me for the past 3.5 hours, you fucking. Why the fuck would I want to trust you now and say, okay, cool?" Or the boss, Big Boss's mentor, and her magical super-powered cobras being sent out to look like they turned on the United States and fighting along with Vulcan, when really they were fighting for the United States with Vulcan for some fucking reason that makes no sense. Or Paz spending about 10 minutes of screen time acting like an innocent 16-year-old that wants peace, only to turn around in the last minute out of nowhere trying to steal Metal Gear Zeke. Or one of my favorites in Metal Gear Solid 4, Rosemary, who's supposed to be Raiden's chick, acting like Campbell's wife. Campbell's much younger wife, estranging his daughter more so, who we've been calling his niece for some reason, but apparently it's his daughter. And the last second turning around saying, "No, this whole time I wasn't with Campbell, I was with you, Raiden. We were just pretending in order to protect me." And this leads to another problem, the cutscene length. These cutscenes are way too fucking long. Most of them, if not all of them, exceed 10 minutes, some 20, some 40, some even 90 minutes, and we're not even talking about the last cutscenes. Imagine you waited all these years for the new Metal Gear game only to sit on your ass and wait for an hour and a half to see their exposition and their character development, which would be warped in the last 4 hours anyway, without being able to control anybody and just waiting and watching. In contrast, another game, Metroid Other M, which had a more intuitive combat system, was criticized, killed for its cutscene length when the longest cutscene is 10 minutes. 10 minutes is the opening scroll in these games. These games have tremendous amounts of time wasted on cutscenes. Some people have said they're supposed to be like movies. Well, these movies are convoluted messes, so the cutscenes shouldn't be that long, especially since you're supposed to be playing a video game and supposed to feel like you're becoming the hero that you're supposed to be representing in the game. One example, of course, that I can use as a simple example, again, is in Metal Gear Solid 4, when you meet Drebin, who's a weapons dealer and launderer. Now, it takes him 14 minutes to explain that his purpose is to decrypt code that the system has put in place to control who can use specific weapons, and he sells weapons. I just explained that in about 20 seconds. It takes 14 minutes for him to explain that. In contrast, a game that has a little bit higher rating than this one, Resident Evil 4, this is how they introduce the weapons merchant.
Got something that might interest you.
But I think the biggest issue that I have with these games is the fact that all of this turmoil, all of this unrest, all of this confusion, and all of this conflict between countries and the United States all revolves around one person, the fucking boss. The colorless, uncharismatic, completely devoid of personality character that has no chemistry whatsoever with the man that was supposed to be her son figure, despite David Hayter's helpless attempts to make it seem like there's something between the two of them. This one character who was playing second fiddle to a twisted whack job in Vulcan at the orders of the United States government that apparently betrayed her and did so loyally without a complaint, this one person's ambition had become the brunt, the motivation for all of this shit. The artificial intelligence known as the Patriots, everything that was going on in the world these last 30 years was all because of a misunderstanding about one woman's ambitions. And they totally got it wrong from what I can tell. From what I can tell, the only thing the boss ever said she wanted was to rebuild the philosopher's legacy, which meant controlling the world, which is what this whole time as Solid Snake you're fighting against. The whole time as Big Boss you're fighting against control of the entire world by one conglomerate. She spoke for that. I don't remember once in her long-winded speech at the end of Metal Gear Solid 3 her saying, "Jack, what I want is a world where orphans of war as children are recruited into a mercenary group that uses bipedal weapons of mass destruction to instill fear upon the world and get what they want." I also don't remember saying, "Jack, what I want is a world that's controlled by an artificial intelligence that manipulates and maintains weapon use and gives people superpowers through microcellular technology." I didn't hear any of this yet. That is what's going on, all because of her. And I also didn't hear her say that she wanted Big Boss to recruit people by shooting them in the head and dragging them off in some kind of Fulton County Stadium aerial system that throws them up in the air somewhere off in the unseen distance. Yes, that is how Big Boss recruits people to be loyal members of his mercenary society. He shoots them in the head with a tranquilizer and then sends them up somewhere, or drags them off somewhere. How the fuck does that work? Well, I wasn't really sure about turning on my homeland or the army that I volunteered for when he shot me in the head, but once I got that balloon ride, I was all on board! So with all the issues that I've mentioned and everything I've said about it, I have to think these games are horrible, don't I? Well, I really can't say. To be fair, I've only really played the first game, and I really didn't get into that game, but even so, I never played the second one or any of these Metal Gear Solid games. And the game that I played was the Nintendo Entertainment System version, which was so far from Hideo Kojima's original idea, it's hard for me to really say that I even played one game. Maybe there is a sense of tension trying to avoid being detected. Maybe there's a great sense of reward when you do avoid being detected. I do have to say that the graphics have always seemed to be cutting edge for the time that these games were made in. Especially the new ones. The motion capture, the visual effects, everything about them is beautiful. And it really helps you get deeply immersed into this reality. But upon saying that, the storylines are just so fucking disconnected and convoluted. Each game, like I said, is its own separate storyline that adds people in that have some real massive influence on what's going on and yet never get mentioned before or after ever again. The chronology is all over the place. The villains are too over the top. The technology is too advanced for one guy to be able to destroy it all. And why do you rely on this one guy? What makes this guy, Big Boss, such a coveted entity in the entire planet? Why would you clone so many out of this one guy? Because he got lucky? What the fuck? He's always being captured, like I said. There's so many different issues with the storyline. There's so many different issues with the cutscenes being too long. There's so many different issues, period. But I can see why people would enjoy these games if you're into stealth games. Yeah, you can run and gun, but that's not really where you're going to get the best experience. Not to mention the hardest difficulties rely on you avoiding detection. So it's in your best interest to simply avoid detection. So with the slow gameplay style, the lack of any kind of player progression, aside from Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, which seemed to have its own version of a hack and slash type feel, had quicker cutscenes, a chick with really massive tits, and above all, this weapons grab system where after defeating villains a la Mega Man, you can get their weapons. Despite that, there really is no sense of improving your character in any form. And the best part about it is Metal Gear Rising Revengeance was one of the few titles with a Metal Gear or Metal Gear Solid title that didn't get a high rating. That and Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes which was basically a $40 1 hour or so prologue explaining exactly how the Phantom Big Boss was in a coma for 9 years, got his robotic right prosthetic arm, and the horn of shrapnel sticking out of his head. But other than that, these titles every one of them that has a Metal Gear Solid on it, all of them have on Metacritic at least an 88 plus rating. Most of them have mid to high 90s ratings in Metacritic. Only Metroid and The Legend of Zelda have a better track record. Not Mass Effect, not even the BioShock series. There are so many games that of a specific canon or setting or series don't come close to the overall rating of these Metal Gear series. And like I said, I don't understand exactly how you can universally say that these games are such great games. How everybody can enjoy these games when simply watching through a playthrough of them makes me want to bash my head through a wall. It's so hard to imagine that everybody can enjoy these games. But most people say these are some of the greatest games they've ever played. Some people talk about how these games got them into game playing, which I can't understand. And some of them even mentioned on a public forum that certain cutscenes that seem over the top or well overdone made them cry. How do these cutscenes make you cry? Some of them are even comical, they're so ridiculous. Overall, considering how there are so many flaws and it's not a universally acceptable title, to say they're some of the greatest games ever made makes this overrated. And thank you all for watching. I have more for you soon to come. So stay tuned, take care, and have a great day.